All right, good morning, everyone. It's Katherine Steele with English Pronunciation for Success. Welcome to my webinar on communication that will help you with your professional image and presence. My guest this morning is Katherine Lazaruk of ICU Image Consulting, and it's such a pleasure to have her. She's going to be talking about how no one sees your skills and how to leverage your professional presence for success. And I know Katherine through a number of organizations, such as the Burnaby Board of Trade. I had a chance to see her speak on a huge panel. Katherine is a strong advocate for diversity in the workplace, and the panel was on women in the workplace. I know that Katherine is also a chair with the Vancouver Board of Trade, and she's on the Women's Leadership Circle with them. And I've had numerous chances to see Katherine around the lower mainland area, around Vancouver. She's an excellent networker. She walks the walk and talks the talk, and she has the skills to take you from excellence in your position to a professional presence that gets the attention of people that you work with, clients, and gives you the confidence to go out into the world and do what you do in a big way. So it is my extreme pleasure to have Katherine here. Let's welcome Katherine Lazaruk. Thank you.
Thank you, Katherine, for that lovely introduction. Yes, we have known each other for a while now. We originally met, I think, at Business Network International, and then we've both been members of the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade for a while and a couple of other places as well. And it's always nice to see friendly faces at the networking events that you go to. If there's anyone on the webinar or watching it later as the recording that's afraid of networking or concerned about networking, often the easiest thing to do is go and introduce yourself to people. And I often think with networking, you don't need to have a whole bunch of conversations. If you just have one good conversation or two good conversations with people that are there, that's often a nice way to go about networking, talking to one person at a time instead of feeling terrified about meeting all the people that you need to meet. So it's great to be here. Should we just dive right in?
I think we'll dive right in. I'm just going to say hi to Abby. Nice to see you, Abby. I'm going to remind people that if you hover over the main screen and then bring your mouse down gently, you're going to see along the bottom a series of icons. One of them is chat. It's got a chat bubble. Click on that. One screen will open on the side, the right-hand side of your screen. At the very bottom, it says type message here, and I'd love to hear who's here. I'd love to hear where you're from, so please type that into the chat. Thanks, Katherine. Go ahead.
Excellent. Okay, and I can see the chat. I'm going to hide my video so I'm not distracted by myself, because that's always interesting when you're on a webinar, on any other kind of Skype call or Zoom call, and you can tell when people are looking at themselves because they usually look down in the corner of the screen. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing to be present on video, so we might talk a little bit about that as we get into webinar content. So it is 10:11, and Katherine, I want to know if you want us to do a hard stop at 11, or if you want to go a little bit over because we started a little bit late. What would be your preference?
I am available for that time period if we need to extend. I want to be conscious of people's time. So if we need to leave exactly at 11, which is different times in different time zones, then by all means do that. I will try to remember to put some contact information. You need to stay because there's something wonderful that Katherine is offering you at the end, but I'll try to have it early enough that people who needed to leave on the hour will have it before the hour.
Okay, great. So there are a couple of questions that I have, and I have the chat window open just off to the right side of my screen, so I can see generally what people are putting in the chat. So before I jump right into the content, I'd like to know if the people who are on the webinar today, if you would like a little bit of context about me, why you should bother listening to me at all, or if we should just jump right into content. So let's see what people have to say. Jump in the chat and let me know if you want to know a little bit more about me before we start, or if you want to just dig right in. Let's see what people say. I'm looking at the chat now.
So Wei Sun said that they had attended a previous webinar. That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, Rob says, of course. So some context for Rob. Anyone else want to jump in? And you want some context, or do you want to jump in?
It might be interesting to hear a bit about your background. It can connect people to why you're doing what you're doing and how that will help them.
Okay.
It will be helpful. Yeah.
Okay. So Abby says context would be helpful as well. And I think, is that okay to say Abby? Catherine, I think you know
Yes.
who that is. And Abby is okay? Okay. I just want to check because, you don't want to shorten some. I hate it when someone shortens my name and calls me Kathy.
Yeah. He's a friend of mine out of Winnipeg.
Oh, great. Okay. So Abby, excellent. Good. So as long as we get the names right, that's good. So yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit about kind of how I got here. So you're meeting me here today as a successful practitioner in image consulting, but also now more into executive presence coaching and leadership development, because I started out my career a number of years ago I'll just tell you how I got here, and then that might be helpful, because if you're experiencing a career transition or a culture shift or anything like that, it might be helpful to hear how somebody else did it. So when I finished my schooling here at UBC, the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, many years ago, I got my degrees in voice performance and in education. So I was splitting my time between singing professionally. So I sang in Vancouver Opera and Vienna and San Francisco and other places around the world, and taught in the public school system. So I taught music, K to 4, kindergarten to grade 4. And the farther along I got in both those careers, the less I liked them, because both of those careers have quite narrow parameters. And I am not a very good small box person. But I didn't know that. So it took me 12 years to figure it out. And how I figured it out was I was really sick and stressed out all the time. And finally, my husband said to me, you have to leave these jobs. They're killing you. And literally, I had a tumor in the lower left lobe of my lung. And that was a big wake-up call for me. I literally was suffocating in this work that I was doing. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that I had to leave. So I left both of those careers, didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I would do. And I started working with a coach. I have always found coaching helpful. And so I was working with a coach and a counselor to try to figure it out. And 6 months later, the tumor was gone. And I had a job doing corporate training at PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is an accounting firm, one of the big 5 accounting firms here in North America and around the world. And I got that job. And I continued to work with the coach because I wanted to find work that would use all of my skill sets all of the time and would give me a lot of latitude for exploring and being autonomous, because what I figured out was that freedom was more important to me than anything. And in fact, that was one of my lists. I built a top 5 list of qualities I wanted my work to have, and freedom was number 1 on that list. So I was working with the coach, and he is kind of an alpha male guy, and sort of like a man's man. And he's great. And he literally sort of leaned back in his chair one day and said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up, little lady? And I laughed, and I had this weird vision. So if any of you are visual thinkers, if you think in pictures, this had happened to me, and it's never happened to me since. I literally had a vision. It was like, shunk. I see you in a circle. It was Times New Roman font. It was silver lettering, purple background. And underneath was image consulting. And then the first tagline I ever used, which was intensive care for your image. And I started to laugh because I thought, oh, that would be so funny. I see you as like intensive care unit. I could be the image doc, and I could fix people up and help them out. And ICU Image Doc is still my Twitter handle. So anyway, I just laughed and I went, oh, that's not even a real job. Like, who does that job? And my coach at the time said, no, that's a real job. You could do that job. And so there's no regulation in my industry at all. So any of you at any time could hang out your shingle and say, I'm an image consultant, and nobody would blink. It's completely unregulated. So at the time I thought, well, I look all right. I've read some books. I'll get a website and some business cards and start practicing. So that's what I did. And I do not recommend that approach to anyone now. I always say, please get a little bit of training, but that's what I did. And I built my business up around the sides of my day job. And when my contract ended at PricewaterhouseCoopers in 2009, I thought, okay, I'd like to do this full time now. So what I did was I got into a business development program through the government, because I'd never run a business. I had no idea how to do that. So I got into this business development program. And then I went to Toronto and I did my certifications in image and advanced image consulting at the International Image Institute.
Oh, okay.
And then the woman who runs that institute, she liked me. So I interned with her, which was a great experience. And then she really liked me. So she made me her Western Canada image trainer. So in addition to my private practice, I do corporate work, and I also have been teaching consultants how to be consultants at Langara here in Vancouver for the past several years. And it's been a really interesting experience because now teaching that material helps me learn it better, which is really great as we go along. And my practice is evolving. So I was ICU image consulting for a long time. And now that I'm doing more leadership presence development and more coaching, I'm actually working with higher level people and helping them refine their executive presence. So my business is rebranding. So soon there will be some exciting changes in my brand and in my website. It's my marketing team's working on it now, and it'll be Lazaruk Consulting. So I'm excited about the changes.
Wow.
Definitely been an interesting transition as we've gone through. So that's more than enough about me. I want to jump into what is in it for you today. So on my screen share, oh, what else? Is there anything else you need to know about me before we go on? I got my international designation in 2011. I'm working on my next level. Got my certified leadership coach. I don't know, a whole bunch of designations. Everybody likes letters. Everybody likes paper as we go through. But I've been doing this for a long time now. It's great. Got an office downtown and got nice friends like Catherine in my networking world. So it's all good.
That's right. And I think it's interesting that people are coming in my sphere, people are coming from another part of the world with huge amounts of experience and skill and a high level of education. Mm-hmm. And they arrive here and somebody needs more paper and more letters beside their name.
Yeah.
A way to prove that they are what they are and they do what they do. And so it's actually interesting to hear how you introduce yourself. What a person hiring you will see is that they like you, they understand you, and they know you can get them from where they are to where they want to be.
Right.
However, having all the other little pieces in place and actually being able to share that is important as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Yeah, crafting your story is an important piece of professional presence, like what you tell people. And what I tell people at the top of a webinar or the top of a presentation is different than what I would say to someone just engaging in conversation at a networking event as well. So it's important to understand kind of what your sound bites are and how to use those in a natural way when you're introducing yourself. And certainly I cannot imagine, I know Catherine, you and I talked about this yesterday, going to a totally different place where I didn't speak the language and didn't understand the culture and trying to overcome the shock of that. So I really applaud anyone who's in that situation now, and I'm amazed at your bravery and your courage for making that change. So let's jump into content. We're going to go through here and talk a little bit about what's going on today. So in the screen share, I'm just going to do my slideshow again. Here's something interesting, Catherine. I discovered that if I go from my slideshow into the presentation, you probably saw it flash back out of the PowerPoint. So I'm learning a little bit more about Zoom, using Zoom as we're going along today, so that'll be fun. So this is the presentation we're talking about today, how nobody sees your skills. And we're going to talk about leveraging your professional presence and what's in it for you today. So we're going to talk about what the elements are. What is professional presence? We're going to talk about why it's important for you to have. We'll talk about how you'll know if you have it or how you know if things that you're doing are working or not working, and how something in your previous cultural context may not work as well in the North American cultural context. And then we'll talk about what you can do next if you want to make some changes and make some assessments in your own professional life. As we go through the workshop today, I'm happy to keep an eye on the chat. And if you have questions about anything that I'm talking about, you're more than welcome to put them in the chat. Commentary, I'll be asking you a few things as we're going along. And Catherine's also going to keep an eye on the chat. And if I miss it, she'll feed it into me as we go through as well. So please do feel free to interact. We have some time here to learn a few things and work together. Okay, so the first question, I'm going to get you into the chat right away again today. So what is professional presence? So what's your understanding of it? What does it look like to you? And I'm going to chat and see.
Just type that into the chat. So what is professional presence?
Yeah, what does that look like for you?
Please type that in. Hover your mouse, go to the bottom, find the speech bubble that says chat. When you click on it at the very bottom of the white panel, you have a chance to type your message here.
So Catherine, I think I'm going to type the chat in again.
Abby says it's personal brand.
Sure. I'm just going to type the question into the chat.
Yes, I typed it in as well.
I think you typed it in just to me. I don't know if anyone else saw it in there.
I wonder why that went. That's very strange.
If you use the drop down beside the two, you'll see if it goes to all panelists and attendees or if it just goes to me. And sometimes if I've sent you a message privately, I think it automatically
clicks it over. Got it.
Perfect.
Okay, good. We have it there.
This is personal brand. So Abby, when you say personal brand, say more about that. What is personal brand? What does that look like, sound like? What is it? What is it?
And I'm going to type something.
Okay, sure.
Identity, values, etc.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, what your identity is, the things that you value, that's part of your personal brand for sure. Anyone else want to jump in? Catherine's typing away.
Yeah. I'm writing how you're seen by others and what strength they believe you have.
Right. Catherine, for the sake of the webinar, since we have just a few participants on the webinar, is it possible to unmute people and have them just answer the questions?
That would be fine.
Why don't we do that? Because I think that might be easier than chatting.
And then what I'm going to do is I'm not turning on your video. I'm turning on your sound. And if at any time you do not want to speak, that's just fine. I'm just going to turn them all on so that you have an opportunity to speak.
Right. And then the other thing that's interesting is if you are not speaking or there's background noise, we might ask you to just mute your own microphone as well. So Rob says what people see the first time from you, what they hear from you, and what they think about you after meeting you, for sure. For sure. It's a little bit about first impression. It's a little bit about lasting impression, professional presence.
So I have to promote to panelist.
Oh, to help. Oh man, we're all going to see everything. So this should be fun. We're going to find out what happens when everybody's a panelist.
Right.
The
problem is I've just promised them I won't have their videos, so.
That's okay. They would have to actually do their video, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So, body language. Abby says body language potentially. That's part of it for sure.
So Rob, I'm unmuting you, or I'm trying to. I'm trying to unmute you, but on your side, you have to allow that as well.
Okay, so Jonathan is unmuted. So Jonathan, do you want to jump into the conversation here and share your thoughts on professional presence? Nope. Oh. Jonathan disappeared. Rob's now unmuted. That's great. Let's see if we can hear anybody when they're talking.
So Rob, what was your comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Great. Okay, great.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
That's wonderful. Thank you for doing this, first of all. For me, professional presence is like you said, is the lasting impression. Well, people see you first time. You do your elevator pitch, and this is what keeps in people's mind how they recognize you when they think about you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Jonathan, do you want to jump in, or?
I'm going to mute you, Rob, and I'll try to get Jonathan up.
Okay. I keep seeing Jonathan appear and disappear, so I'm not sure if there's some technical difficulty.
It's because he has to come back as a panelist.
Oh, I see. So
Jonathan, are you able to comment on your opinion of professional presence? Jonathan, do you hear us?
You might need to respond in the chat because we're not hearing anything back from you. So there might be a microphone issue potentially. What I'm going to do, Catherine, if it's okay with you, is Jonathan, if you want to throw your response into the chat, that would be great. Catherine's just asked you the question in the chat as well. So, oh, you can hear us. Okay, great. For some reason, we can't hear you. So if you want to just put your response or your thoughts in the chat, that would be great.
Okay.
Then I'm going to ask the next question.
All right, sounds good. And Waisam, I see that you might want to have a comment as well. I'll let you come on in a minute, and Abby, you as well. Well, go ahead, Catherine.
Okay, so professional presence, you're absolutely right. There are definitely elements that you guessed. But let's talk about, oh, resume my share. There we go. So funny. Hang on a second. Keep going. There we go. Use my arrow buttons. Why is it important? Jonathan says, I think it's what others see you as. Yeah, that's part of your brand. Sometimes I've heard brand described as what people say about you when you're not around, which is part of it as well. But your presence can be something that lasts and is around when you're not there. But it can also be how people interact with you and experience you for the first time or over multiple times. So why is it important? Let's talk about that. If people want to unmute themselves, we can just jump in and have a conversation about it, or you can put your response in the chat, whatever you prefer. We'll just take a minute or two to answer this question. Why is it important?
So Waisam, I've tried to unmute you. And as I say, if you don't want to, you don't need to. It's your decision. It's your choice today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to try to unmute Abby as well.
As we go through, Catherine, because my office is downtown and I often have sirens going by. So
okay, that's fine. Yes, if you hear us leaping off, it's because there's an ambulance or a police car going.
Abby says to establish trust with your audience. Yeah. Yeah. We want people to know, like, and trust us faster in order to build credibility and build relationships. Vancouver particularly is a very relational town. So I've been doing a little bit of research on success factors, particularly for women in Vancouver, but Vancouver seems to be more relational than some other places. And some people have shared information that it's a bit harder to break into. I didn't find that experience, but I've been here a long time, and I also tend to be the person who would extend myself. So I think it depends on your approach as well. Anyone else have an idea about why professional presence might be important?
I think for my group, if the person is from another part of the world,
okay,
and there's no quick and easy way to confirm that they are what they say they are on their resume,
okay,
or in person, everything that they've got going for them, from their clothing to the way that they phrase what they have to say to the group, if it's powerful enough, it creates trust in the listener.
Right.
And so even though we aren't able to call up your previous employer or see the work that you've done because we can't translate it easily, we would believe you are who you are because you believe it so fully in yourself, right down to your shoes.
Right. And so Abby says social proof. Rob says it can help you to open doors or close them forever. So that's true. It is important. We're going to talk a little bit about the science behind it so that you know. So what we're going to do next is take a look at the elements in a model that I work with when I'm working with people. And I'm working on my own models as well. This particular model was developed by one of my colleagues who's in London, Sarah Brummett. And I like it because it's very clear. So if you think about being a leader, and everybody's a leader in some way, one way or another, even in small ways, large ways, helping people to move forward in their careers or personally, everybody's a leader in different places. So she talks about the different aspects of being a leader and what leadership presence or executive presence, professional presence looks like. And sometimes people say, well, I'm not an executive, so it's not executive presence. And I say, great, you might be a professional. And they say, well, I'm not a professional, but you know, I see people in my day-to-day world doing, like, I stay home with my kids or something like that. And then it's just personal brand. So it's interesting to me, the different labels that people put on this presence piece. And really, it's just your energetic signature and how you come across. So looking at the different elements, here's the way that we look at it often in our industry. So there is the look part of it. So that is how you show up, everything visual about you. And this involves your grooming, your clothing, your expressions, the car you drive, what else? The way that you cut your hair, the makeup you wear or don't wear, anything involved visually, so that's nonverbal, your body language, all of those kinds of things go into the look of a leader. Also, the next element of that is engage, which means how you actually interact with people. How do you inspire them? How do you get them to talk to you? How do you talk to them? Is it respectful? How do you engage people? How do you get them to want to talk to you? The third element is act, which is your behavior. Because we've all seen people who look really great, they seem really engaging, and then they do something that's so off the mark that they immediately lose credibility, or you stop trusting them. Or maybe they didn't look so great, maybe they're not engaging people, but they're acting in ways that make you respect them. So act, how you behave, is a huge part of your presence as well. The fourth element is deliberate. So this is how you think. When you're a leader, you think a little bit differently, or when you think of yourself as a leader, you might be a leader in your family, you might be a leader at your work, you might be a leader in your community, you might be a leader in your social organizations. You might be someone who leads differently, like you might not lead from the front, but maybe you lead from behind, maybe you lead from the side, you're coaching people along as a peer. But the way that you think has a lot to do with your presence, the way that you show up, the assumptions that you make when you're in rooms, the way that you speak to people has a lot to do with your thought patterns. So we look at that when we're looking at presence as well. The fifth thing that we look at is evolve, which means really the pace of change now has never been as fast as it is, and it will never be this slow again. So every leader, every person who's a professional, everyone who wants to have presence needs to be able to change. So one of the things that I look at with my leaders and with the people that I work with is how well do you adapt to change? How well do you go through it? For me, I love change. I like things to change. And I don't mind thinking up the change, and I don't mind starting the change, but being in the process of change, particularly if it takes a while, is excruciating for me. I would love to be able to just go and be changed, and then I would be fine. But going through the process, I find excruciating. Doesn't mean I don't do it, but I just know that about myself, that some point in the process, I'm going to feel frustrated. Some point in the process, I'm going to feel excited. At some point in the process, I'm just going to feel tired, and I just want to get it over with. So I know that. So thinking about how you adapt to change as a person, how you evolve. And finally, I talk to people about how they resonate with others. And this is specifically directed to your verbal communication. What is your voice doing? What is your tone doing? How articulate are you? Can you be heard? Can you be heard on a conference call? Can you be heard in social settings? Can you be heard when you're doing a webinar like this? What is your voice doing for you? Is it helping you or hurting you as part of your professional presence? So those are the 6 elements that I'm working with currently as a model. So we're going to talk a little bit about what professional presence looks like, or what the presence of people look like. And I'm going to give you a little exercise here. I want you to think about, if you look at the pictures of the people that are on screen, we're going to talk a little bit about who they are. What do you think about them when you see them? So in the chat, or you can jump on your mic, unmute. Let's talk about person number 1. What do you think person number 1 does for work? What do they do for a living?
All right, remember you're typing it into the chat, and we're looking at the man on the left, number 1.
Person number 1 with the 1 over top of his head.
We don't see all of the numbers.
Oh, you don't? Oh, that's interesting.
See the bottom portion of the number. So.
Really? Okay, that's really interesting that it pops in that way with this slide share. Okay, Abby says banker.
Banker. Any office job, bank, executive, etc. is from Rob.
Right. Anyone? Wysam, do you have something you want to throw in, or Jonathan? Still checking out the chat. If you don't feel comfortable typing, you're more than welcome to jump on and give your answer verbally as well. Office job? Okay. Excellent. So if you had to guess at person number 1's level of education, what level of education do you think he has? Some kind of degree, Abby says. Okay. And Abby, if you like, you can actually choose in the chat. You'll see the little drop down. It says all panelists and attendees, or to all panelists. If you change your drop down to all panelists and attendees, then everyone else can see your responses as well. And Wei-Sam, same with you. If you change your drop down to all panelists and attendees, then everyone can see your response as you go through. So Wei-Sam says degree holder, Jonathan says
college and university.
Great. So if you had to think about, let's see, where this person would live, somewhere in the Lower Mainland, in Vancouver area, if you're familiar with the area, where do you think he might live? And if you're unfamiliar with this area, do you think he lives in the city? Do you think he lives out in the country? Do you think he lives, like, where do you think he lives? Downtown?
Downtown?
I
don't know.
Let's see. Just your best guess as to where you think he lives.
Any city of Lower Mainland.
Yeah. So Catherine, if it's okay, I think it's okay if I read out the chat. I can still see it. And if I can't see it, can I ask for your help then at that point?
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Okay, let's see what else is coming along. In the city. I think we've heard almost from everybody. Abby, I think didn't put in an idea of where he lived. Okay, let's see. So city living. I'm going to ask another question about him. What do you think, where do you think, or how much money do you think he makes? If you had to just do a ballpark guess. Maybe 100K, maybe 70K, somewhere in there. Professional salary. Yep, more than 65K a year. Okay, all right. And what do you think of his relationship status? Do you think, is he married? Is he dating? Is he single? Like, what's his story? Maybe single, okay. Rob says, laughing. Wow. Rob, you can actually change yours to all panelists and attendees as well, so other people can see your response in the chat too, in your drop down. Okay, so single, let's see. Okay, let's look at person number 2. What does person number 2 do for a living, do you think? Musician, maybe? Yeah, possibly. Let's see, what else? Artist of some kind? Entertainment or the arts? Okay, actress, something like that. In entertainment of some kind. What kind of education do you think she has? Maybe college? Wei-Sam says high school. Rob says maybe some college. College or secondary, okay. How smart do you think she is? Because we know there's a big difference between being smart and being educated. So how smart do you think she is? Rob says no idea. Just your best guess. Jonathan says average. Abby says good enough. Okay. And the interesting thing about this exercise, I don't know if you're experiencing this, but often when I do this exercise, some people feel very uncomfortable with this particular exercise. So it could be making you being a little bit squirmy in your seat, and that's normal, so no worries. Okay. What kind of car do you think? If she was driving a car, what kind of car do you think she would drive? A race car. He says a race car. Okay. What else? Something from early 2000. Okay. So slightly older car. Let's see what else comes up. Maybe what color is the car? Let's see what the answers are. Red. Rob says red. Abby says red. Okay. Let's move on to person number 3. Jonathan says maybe red as well. Let's now move on to person number 3. What does person number 3 do for a living? Or tell us a little bit about person 3. What do you think? Abby says that person 3 might be a student or a technician. Waysam says technician. Rob says maybe an informal job or IT student, maybe part-time. Maybe warehouse or IT, okay? And what do you think about this person's marital status? Is this person married? Are they dating? Are they single? What's the story? Okay, Abby says this person might be single, dating, maybe married with a family, okay? And let's see, what kind of car does this person drive, do you think? Maybe a Ford, a truck of some kind, F-150, small truck, Toyota. Okay. Something maybe practical. Okay. And let's look at, finally, sportish but not expensive, Rob says. Okay, let's look at person number 4. What does she do for a living? Abby says maybe an executive. Well, Abby says executive. I don't need to say maybe or add any other words to that. Office or corporate executive or assistant. Jonathan and Rob think that. Okay. Where does she live? If she's going to live in the Lower Mainland, where do you think she lives? Rob says Richmond. Jonathan says maybe West End or North Van. I keep adding maybe in, and it's because we really don't know, but we're doing our best to guess where we think they live. Is person number 4 married or dating or single, or what's person 4's number story? What's the last person's story? The woman on the far right-hand side of your screen. Abby thinks married. Rob says married. Kids or no kids for person number 4? What do you think? Married with kids. Some people say no kids. Some people say 1 kid. Okay. Just let me know in the chat if you think that we just made a series of judgments about these people. Just yes or no. Did we make judgments or not make judgments about these people? Abby says, yeah, we made some judgments about them. Okay, yeah. Rob says no. Rob, you didn't make any judgments about where they lived or who they were dating or answer any questions about that? I understand that's part of the exercise. Oh yeah, he says yes. Okay, so how many of you, you can just say in the chat again with a yes or no, how many of you felt a little bit bad for judging them so quickly and harshly without knowing anything about them other than seeing their pictures on screen? Abby says no, didn't feel bad. Jonathan says, yep, felt bad. Rob, did you feel bad or not bad? You said me. Catherine said she felt a little uncomfortable. Rob says, yeah, felt a bit bad. Okay, this is really common as well because here's the thing, I've got good news for you in the sense that it's just the way our brains are wired. It's pure neurology. So our brains are a little bit like filing cabinets and we learn by experiencing things. So over time, what happens is our brain starts to file away all of the information that we get from all of the experiences that we have. And when we get older, all of a sudden our filing cabinets are so full of information that we don't always have time to mentally go through the filing cabinet to get to the judgment about somebody. So what our brain is doing is actually quickly finding the information. And the thing about the judgment part is that part of your brain is really fast. It's called the reticular activating system. It's like Google for your brain. So basically what it does is instead of going, okay, I need to really stop and think about this person, and I need to get to know them a little bit more, and I need to talk to them to really find out who they are, and that may be true, but this part of your brain has already made a decision about that person based on the information in your filing cabinet, essentially, as you've gone through. So what's happening is that part of our brain is very fast. It's the back of your brain. It's designed to keep us alive and safe. So any situation that you're going into, anytime you meet someone who's in a situation that you're in, all of us are making these assessments, whether we're conscious of them or not. And those judgments could be good, they could be not good, they could just be what they are, but everybody does it all the time. So anytime you're going into a job interview, anytime you're going to a networking function, anytime you're meeting anyone, they're making those assessments about you, whether they're aware of it or not. And some of the things that people decide about you in your professional presence is really just a form of communication. So your professional presence and your personal presence is just telling people things about you. Whether those things are accurate or not depends on what you're putting out there and what's in people's filing cabinets. And so it was interesting to me to do the exercise where we were looking at people's pictures, because in a North American cultural context, I can tell you that person number one is always in finance. Person number two, she always drives a red car. Sometimes it's pink. Person number three is always in IT, or he's a student a lot of the time. And person number four almost always lives in Richmond and is married with kids. So there are things that people are deciding about you, and here are just a few of them when they first meet you. So they're deciding how smart you are. They decide or assess what level of education you are. They look at your socioeconomic level. They make an assumption about where you might live, what your relationship status is, and likability, whether or not they think they're going to like you. And all of this really just comes from the visual cues that you're giving them and the nonverbal cues. And then, of course, as they get to know you, these things can change as you go along. And it's interesting. I do another exercise in one of my corporate workshops where I get people to write down 3 words or a phrase that describes them. And then I ask the other people in the workshop to write down what they think describes that person. And if it's a first impression, the things are sometimes accurate, they're sometimes inaccurate. If it's a lasting impression, if it's a group of people that knows each other quite well, the cards that the people write and the cards that people write about them are a little bit more aligned, more accurate. So over time, these things can change and be cemented, but initially, when you're meeting people in new situations, you can communicate clues about who you are to people faster so they get to know you. And it just makes it easier for people to get to know you. So here's another question for you. What do you think contributes to your success? So the percentage of skill set versus your presence in order to succeed, to advance, to move ahead. So if you just had to ballpark this percentage of skills, this percentage of my presence, what do you think the percentage might be on either side of those? Let's just see in the chat what you think. Everybody's thinking, I feel like I should be singing the Jeopardy song. Give people a little bit of time to think about what percentage of skills and what percentage of presence. Okay, so Rob thinks 70% skills, 30% presence. Thank you. Catherine's going to put hers in. 50-50, Jonathan says. Abby says 60% skills, 40% presence. See? Catherine says 80% presence, 20% skills. Ah, you already know the answer because you've seen this question before.
No, actually, I'd forgotten.
But you're actually correct. You're closest to correct.
Okay, because I was thinking that if they bother to apply, they have the skills. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at it from the
hiring point of view.
Hiring point of view, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually called execution bias. So people assume that if you're doing what you're doing, it's that you can do it. Whether or not they hire you, retain you, want to work with you is based 85% on your presence, how you show up, whether they not they want to date you, if they want to relate to you, if they want to buy stuff from you, if they want to hire you for a job. 15% is your skills. 85% is how you show up in the world. So knowing that, then it's worth thinking about a bit more. So here's some more stats, if you like information stats. Attractive workers are considered better at what they do. This was a study done in conjunction with Harvard and Wesleyan universities. And what they found was people who were considered attractive, and attractive being a very wide umbrella. It's not just about your physicality, but about how you show up with people. They're considered better at what they do. Also, if you're selling something or giving service to someone, if you look like what people expect, So let's say you're selling TVs and you look like someone who would sell TVs or knows a lot about TVs, then people who are buying from you are going to feel more likely to purchase. They elicit those stronger purchasing intentions than people who are inappropriately dressed. So if they're looking for a TV and someone doesn't look like a TV salesperson or someone who would know a lot about TV, then they're going to be less likely to want to buy from you. Also, they're finding out now that dressing in sharper clothing actually increases your ability to think in abstract, which is great for leadership or if you're moving up the chain in work. If you dress more sharply, it actually helps you think a little bit differently. And also, attractive workers earn more money, typically. And they haven't yet established the correlation between whether or not people who are attractive have more social capital and opportunities to interact, so they're better at negotiating, better at asking for what they want, they feel more confident, or if it really is purely related to somebody's attractiveness. So they're still working on figuring that out. But they do know that there is what they call a beauty premium of 10 to 15% more money. And here's another one that's from a more recent study, is men who wore suits in negotiation actually earned a lot more, and they gave up less when they were wearing a suit. So that experiment is really interesting, and if you Google suited men negotiation and Krauss, you'll find the data on that as well. So there's a big difference between someone being fine and someone being intentional. So everybody that comes to work with me on their presence, on their leadership development, they're all fine. The people that I work with are not looking really strange. They're not really off the mark. They're not way out there. They're already generally fairly successful, and they just want to move up. They need to make some refinements in their executive presence to move them forward. They want to be more intentional about the choices that they're making. So the men that I work with might be wearing a suit, but what kind of suit? They may be thinking a certain way, but how are they thinking? Are they being very intentional about the way that they're showing up, the way that they're coming to work? So what do you want people to think about you when they see you? What do you want people to think about you when they're interacting with you over the long term? And that's really what executive presence and professional presence is all about. It's creating intention behind what you're putting on, how you're showing up, the way that you're speaking, all of those pieces. So thinking about how you stack up, here are some questions that you can ask yourself to think about, how am I doing with my professional presence? So thinking about all of the elements that we talked about earlier under these areas, here are some good questions to ask yourself to see if any of those areas need attention. So how do you look when you walk out the door? Do you look great? Do you feel great in what you're wearing? Do you feel confident in your choices? Do you think, yes, this really expresses who I am? Do people say things to you about the way that you look or the way you come across? Do they enjoy your energy? Do you get compliments? Do they notice you? Are you in the forefront? Or are you behind? Like, how do you look and feel when you go out the door? How often do you get a good response from people? And a good response could be something like you're walking down the street and you say good morning to someone and smile, and they say good morning and smile back. How often do you get a good response? Do you get people listening to your ideas? Do you get people to follow you? Are you inspiring? How often are you getting a good response from people? Also, is the way that you behave supporting you? So, for example, are you showing up on time to meetings? Is that a behavior that's working for you? Are you responding to emails when someone sends them? Are you doing things to be successful in your eating and sleeping and personal maintenance? How are you behaving, and is that supporting your presence when you show up? Are you able to be fully there because you're well rested, because you ate well, because you look and feel great, because you are changing your thinking patterns? How is the way that you behave supporting you? And then thinking about the mental blocks that you might have, because it's not only the way you think about things and how you approach things, it's also the way you think about yourself. If you think about yourself as someone who is interesting, attractive, likely to get a good response from people, those things magnify. Whatever you think about yourself and whatever you think about the world is generally how you experience the world and how people experience you, provided that you have enough self-awareness to be able to assess those things. And sometimes just getting to the self-awareness part for people can be tough, because the way sometimes people see themselves is 180 degrees different than how other people see them. So their self-awareness is low. But for people that have a relatively high degree of self-awareness, you can pretty well say, is the way I'm thinking about myself coming across? Are there blocks? So if you only think of yourself as one thing. So for example, when I was leaving teaching, all I could think about was I'm a teacher. I'm an elementary school teacher. I teach music. And I couldn't see that I actually had a lot of transferable skills that I could use in other environments. So I had this mental block around, what else can I do if I can't do this thing that I've trained for, for the last number of years that I've been doing for a dozen years. Thinking about that. Also ask yourself, how well do I make these shifts? How well do I engage in change? How good am I at that? And then finally, how often do people listen to me? Am I actually getting heard? Do people enjoy hearing my voice? Do they want to talk more to me? Do they want to listen to what I have to say? So those are some questions that you can ask yourself as you're going through looking at your executive presence or leadership presence and saying, hey, is this working? And then you can say, okay, well, what areas might need some attention? Do I need some attention on my look? Do I need some attention on how well I engage people? Do I need some attention on the way that I behave? Do I need attention on the way that I think and how I change and how I speak to people? What kinds of things might need attention? And I love this test and measure concept. It works great for business. It's worked great for things in my life too. The issue with presence is we will never experience ourselves the way other people experience us. It's not possible. So even if I see myself on a video recording, even if I hear an audio tape of myself, or you do that for yourself, it's still being translated through a digital medium. So there's no way for you to experience yourself the way other people experience you. The only way that you can check to see how your professional presence is working is by testing things out. So for me, for example, in my experience, when I started my image business, I was really concerned about individuality. So everything that I wore and the way that I projected myself and the messages that I gave to people were all about being an individual. And when I learned or finally realized, again, that we don't live in a vacuum, right? So people are expecting certain things of me based on my profession, I shifted, and then my business got better. My interactions with people got better. The questioning my credibility didn't exist anymore. So I could measure the difference between what I was doing before and what I'm doing now and how that changed for me. So if you want to change one of those things, see how it goes. Actually test it out and measure the results, the difference for yourself. So as we go through, I've gone through this. It is 11 o'clock. So anybody that has to leave, if you need to go, or 10 o'clock, or we're at the top of the hour, unless you're in Newfoundland, and then I guess it'll be the bottom of the hour. If you're at the top of the hour here, are there any questions that you have about leadership presence as we're going through? Any insights that you've had during the webinar, and any actions you think you might like to take as you're going through into this next phase? Anything that you'd like to toss into the chat, any questions you have. We'll take a few minutes now to do that. I can hear you typing away. For those of you that are leaving on this webinar now, I'm going to put my email in the chat, and then I'll come back and do some Q&A. So for people who want to stay longer, we'll do the Q&A after. And for people that need to go, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what I have to offer you and how you can get in touch with me if there's something else that you want to do as we go through. So the answer is there's really no way to figure all this out by yourself. Professionals get help with what they're doing, and I did it too. So here's a picture of me. On the right-hand side, that's what I was doing before, really individual, trying to figure myself out, being really kind of chunky, funky, kind of soft and casual for Vancouver. And what I discovered was I needed to be a little bit sharper, a little bit more polished, and a bit more put together for my field. And so on the left, this is more how you see me now. When I'm at a presentation, I'm more likely to wear a suit jacket. I still don't want to wear a suit because I really feel too buttoned up when I do that. But you'll see me a little bit more put together as we go through. So everybody needs a little bit of help to figure it out. So here's a special offer for all the people who are attending the webinar today. I have a little offer for you. So normally my professional, well, not normally, they do. My professional development programs for people start at about $3,600 when we're actually working through things, and then they range up from there. Because you're attending the webinar today and you might be curious about what we do, I'm going to be doing a special offer of a little starter pack of some coaching calls, 3 coaching calls for $7.99. So if you want to do something like that, just get a little taste of how to evolve your professional presence. I'm just doing that for a limited number of people. And if you want to do that, all you need to do is email me and we'll book a strategy call by August 31st. So you have until next Friday, and if you're seeing the recording, you have until next Friday to contact me, Katherine@icuimage.com, to book a strategy call, and then I'll make sure that that offer is available for you All you need to do is say, I attended the webinar, I'd like to do a strategy call, and then I can tell you about the other programs, but if you want to take advantage of the special offer to get started, you certainly can. If you want to know more about how to elevate your own professional presence in one aspect of those areas. So Catherine also put my email in the chat, Katherine@icimage.com. And so if you book a strategy call with me by August 31st, then I'll make sure that that offer is available for you. And I've never done that before, so I usually do regular programs. We'll see how it goes. If you enjoy it and you want to try it out. I know it can sometimes be intimidating. The first time I signed up for a coach, when I started my business, it was a long time ago, and it was a huge investment for me, and I was really worried about it. So I thought, well, we'll try something so you can dip your toe in and see if you want to do a little bit of work there as well. So I'm just
that is amazing. I don't know if these guys realize that you have given my group, this special little group, a wonderful price to get started with you. That hasn't been available. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
I thought I would try it out. I'm like, hey, why not? We'll see how it goes and see if people. Yeah, it's a commitment, right? You got to decide if you want to do something, and that can feel like a really big thing to do. So.
And Rob, I know that you are huge value. You're a big player in Vancouver and across the country because you work with clients everywhere. That's so generous. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Oh, I just sent that message to you, but I meant to send it to Rob. Rob asked whether or not I do something with color. Yes, color is actually a big part of visual signature. So when I'm helping someone develop their executive presence and we're looking at the look part of it, then color is a part of that for sure. Because color sends different messages, and combinations of colors sends different messages. And sometimes you might love a color and it might not love you. So that's part of the work that I do. Thanks for asking.
Catherine, do you find that people from different cultures have different opinions about color as well?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So the way that I work is it depends on where people are going. So I've had clients who are working in other cultures. So then we craft their look accordingly and their behavior accordingly in the way that they speak. All of that is designed to be bridged to the culture that they're working in. So for people that are coming here into the North American culture, then we work at it from this cultural context. So that we have to take that into account every time that we're working with the client.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very important. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions or insights or actions? We have about 5 minutes left on the webinar today, so now's your chance to ask questions if you want to ask them in this format, and if not, you can certainly book a call with me and I can answer questions for you then as well. And the strategy call is really designed for us to get to know each other a little bit better. So I can really understand what your challenges are and see where I might be able to help you if it feels like it's the right fit for you. You're welcome, Rob. Rob says, thanks. I'm glad the hour has been useful for you. That's great. What was the big takeaway for you, Rob? Was there anything that you didn't have coming into the conversation that you have now? And if anyone else wants to jump into the chat and share an insight or share an action that they're going to take, I'd love to hear what you took away from today's presentation. The method of delivery. So Abby, do you mean in the programs that I work in? Okay, yes. So the way that I work in my programs is there's a combination of coaching and consulting in all the programs that I offer. For your special offer, it's coaching and it's on the phone, or it's likely going to need to be on Skype if there's a particular visual aspect that you want to work on, so we would do it remotely. Sometimes I have people come to me face-to-face depending on the level of the program. So each program has its own set of components, but it's a combination of coaching, which is helping you take action and move forward on whatever it is that you're looking to improve, and consulting, which is offering advice and strategies for ways to improve the things that you want to improve. So it's a combination of working remotely on the phone, or working remotely on Skype, or working face-to-face, depending on what it is that we're doing. Catherine says, I love becoming more aware of my initial impressions of others. It made me think of how people might be seeing me when they first meet me. You're welcome, Abby. Thanks. Anyone else want to throw in before we finish up? We've got about 4 minutes left. Any insights, actions? Any other questions that you'd like to ask? You're welcome, Abby. Actually, I think you were saying thank you for the first answer, so welcome again. You're welcome, my son. Okay, I think, Catherine, I'm going to hand it back to you.
All right. I'm just going to put information back into the chat so that people have that to look at. And I want to thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure having you on the webinar. And I look forward to hearing from the people that have connected today. Please stay in touch with me as well. I'm going to put my information into the chat. You can reach me. I will be having more webinars on communication, so please stay connected to hear more about them. And I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, please send me a message to say hi, say you're on the webinar today. And Catherine, thank you so very much.
My pleasure.
You have a very good day, and I look forward to seeing you at another networking event.
That would be great. Thanks very much, everybody, for attending.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being on the webinar this morning.
Bye.